And it was yesterday, February 8th, 2023, that I finished Tiamat's Wrath by James S.A. Corey. Sorry for the inconvenience here. This is the last book I don't own, so sorry I have to show it on the phone, but Book 8 of The Expanse by James S.A. Corey. Fantastic series that I've been loving, and now we're on the last book, which we'll talk about that more at the end. But before we get into the journey that this series has been, we need to talk about the journey that has been this book, and just how much I love this book, because it's fantastic. I love it, and I don't really have the words to show you how much I love it, so spoilers is just going to be a list of a lot of scenes, but that's fine. We'll get there when we get there, but first we have non-spoilers, so just jumping right in to try to keep this shorter than it would be. This is a fantastic book. Period. Like, period. No more elaboration. It pulls me back to Cibola Burn, I think, is how I want to explain it. It's not alike to Cibola Burn. Cibola Burn has all kinds of different issues and different things that caught my intrigue and made me panic and really invested me in the story. It's different in that regard, but in terms of kind of some of the ideas, the dramatic irony, and stuff like that, it takes me back to that book. We're back to the more alien fright than the humanity fright in this book. And that's not entirely true. That's not the whole book, but there's so much more of that it takes me back to that book. Because that's the last book we had a lot of big alien things happen. And I'm all for it. I'm all for it. So this book has been pulling me back to that book, and has been reminding me of how much I love that book, because I really do love it. And I love this one because it has so much of that mystery and that intrigue and pulling me along. But as we'll talk about more, on top of all the more mystery and intrigue and making my heart pound, it also has some fantastic character moments in this book and some great interactions and a new character that I just love how they did her plot, and dramatic irony. I think the dichotomy of dramatic irony is the biggest thing I want to talk about in non-spoilers, because I mentioned it in my last review for book 7. They have different perspectives on different sides, if you want to put people on sides. They had perspectives on different sides, and you would hear elements from each side, and then you would see them counteract each other, and it really ratcheted up the intensity of the last book. They did it again in this book. There were sides of a sense. I mean, you could argue, but there were sides of a sense, and because of that, and we'll get there in a second. Because of that, there's so much information that none of the other characters know that you know, and the entire book you're anticipating the other characters finding out that information, and you're anticipating if they'll ever find out, or if they don't know, or if they'll make a mistake, and all kinds of things. The unknown and what the characters don't know really stands out in this book in a way that I cannot convey, but it's fantastic and I love it. The middle of the book had me by my heartstrings. Not just because of the unknown, but also because, my attachment to the characters was really strong in this book. The point that I was I'll say that in a minute. The characters are also scattered in this book, which gives it a different perspective. There's only one other book where that happened, so we're really used to everybody being together and all that stuff. This book, scattered, everyone's apart, and it just feels wrong in a way. But while it feels wrong, it allows us to see who the characters are by themselves. And I really like that, and I think that's what finally got me really, really, really attached to the characters in this book, is hearing their voices and the voices of the other characters compared to their voices. And their age. I think that's the other element. It's because they're so much older now and they've had time and they've really consolidated their beliefs. You can see that in each individual voice. You can see their beliefs, and you can see how they think about the other people in the crew and their beliefs and stuff like that. And because of that, they feel like people. They feel like other people, and maybe they and I don't agree on everything, but they're people, and I love that. I'm not saying that hasn't come up in other books, because it has, but in this book, there's a level of like nostalgia and just love for these characters. And the author's using it to pull my heartstrings. We can go on forever about that. But yeah. I literally wrote, authors got me good. I wrote, authors got me good. Yeah, they really baited me with all that. And I do love them. And the last thing I wrote down here regarding characters is their quotes, their catchphrases. Again, it points out how unique all of their voices are, and how unique all of them are, and how people will remember them for those things. And I just, again, now I'm starting to like just love. I accidentally ended my recording. I love how the different parts of the crew are all very different, and they speak differently, and they have different like things that they find important, but the way they work together is, I mean, not work together, but the way that they reflect on each other is fantastic. And a lot of those specific quotes come in, and the authors also use that. They use your knowledge of these characters and your knowledge of like how they speak and how they talk to lead you along in the book. And it's great. It's so good. It's so good. So, with all of that said, in spoilers, I want to elaborate on why I love certain characters a lot right now. So, we're just gonna head into spoilers. I'll sip my tea like the old days when I always sip tea between spoilers and non-spoilers. Tea. It's sugar-free, so it's actually gross. Jumping right in, Holden. I love every single scene with Holden in this book. Every single one. Love it. His speech, how he is, his age, and seeing how his time as a prisoner, but with his age and like his situation, which we don't really grasp until the epilogue / in the next book, which I may or may not have already started. But we don't really grasp how deep his situation goes, but in the glimpses we get of him through another character, it's fantastic. The way he's kind of plotting and working and like kind of suspicious, kind of devious, but like also like kind of, I don't want to say a wise old man, because he's really not wise. He's Holden, and the words wise and Holden do not belong together, but that kind of vibe. Just everything about the glimpses we see of him from the outside is fantastic, and it really drew me along as a reader, because, I mean, he's Holden. He's Holden. So it's just fascinating going through and seeing all of that. I love him. Like, this is the book where I will, like, definitively say I love James Holden, the character. The book, I will say it. Because, yeah, who he's become and how it's represented in this book is fantastic. And even with, like, his mistake and the moment where Elvie is, like, doubting Holden, thinking Holden would actually kill a 14-year-old, which we know as the reader he would not do that. And we're very confident in the reader that he would not, as the reader, that he would not do that. But it's still that double take of, like, the person is still who we think he is, right? Fantastic. So every single scene with Holden, fantastic. Teresa. This is fascinating to me. Usually I hate teenage characters, and I say that as a teenager. I think the problem is that most of the teenage characters I read while I was a teenager, because I technically am still a teenager. And I just get so critical towards it, because I compare it to like my life and my teenagehood and all the stereotypes. Like, I see how much it's hooked on stereotypes and stuff like that. So I get very picky of teenagers written by adults. usually. Even though, by all accounts, they're probably more right than I am. But Teresa, for some reason that I have not put together yet, is one of my favorite, probably the favorite teenage character I've ever read. And towards the end, don't really like her, but her whole like first part of her story, like the first like 2/3, we can maybe even say 3/4 of her story, I love it. Like, I was looking forward to her perspective every chapter, looking forward to what she would find out. Her interactions with Holden, her interactions with Timothy, who we'll talk about next, and her interactions with like Illich and I wasn't going to say Duarte, but Duarte obviously, and Trejo. That's the last guy. This is the book where I've got people's names down the best. I am proud of myself. But Illich and Trejo and Duarte, all of her interactions with them, and I like the little allusions, the little hints. They're very obvious in their own way, like having her watch stories of people escaping to like fairy worlds and stuff like that. They're obvious. They're obviously foreshadow-like. They're obviously getting her to reflect on her situation, but I just love how it was done anyway. It's fantastic, and just her slow growth as a person to the Timothy moment, which again we will talk about intently, really puts it together. And then her life after that moment, like, really, she sees all the pieces fall into place and she understands what she's at. And again, I like her all the way through until you can tell her personality is so different from the start that it's a little hard to like the personality at the end. Now that we're in an outside perspective, it's hard to see it the same way as the inside perspective, which is probably how life is. But yeah, I love her. Moral of the story. And I love how they used her as a plot device with all the little nuggets of information, particularly with my next point. I know I said Timothy would be next, but we have a point before we get to Timothy that has to do with Teresa. Particularly with Teresa's interactions with Duarte, the idiot. I'm sorry. I'm going to call him Duarte the idiot. But I'm going to say that with a caveat. In Teresa's point of view, Duarte sounds wise and logical and like he is a ruler who does know everything he's supposed to know. And he's very charismatic. And you can see his charisma in Teresa's perspective. And it gives you, the reader, perspective on what he's like and how the situation is and how people look up to this person. And it makes you want to believe he is doing the right thing. Not like the right thing like morally, but like the right thing in he's going to save humanity. But when you actually think about the words he's saying, like, we're going to try to bomb the enemy and see what they do to us, it's idiotic. It's insane. And I love that Teresa's instinct went against it and flat out said like what the reader would have answered. And then Duarte's like, no, that's the wrong answer, and here's why. And you can see that Teresa both has the instinct to take it at face value and the instinct to believe her own belief. And just that scene in particular, I love it, because then right after, Duarte's a fucking idiot, and he does it, and things happen. And we'll talk about that when we get to LV. But before we get to LV, we want to talk about Timothy, because we're talking about Teresa, we might as well talk about Timothy, Amos Burton, who I totally took at face value as dead, even though he died off screen. Like, people don't die off screen. I just didn't think about it. When Naomi said that Amos was probably dead, I was like, dang, I guess he's probably dead. That sucks. He wasn't. He was Timothy Amos Burton, hiding in a cave with a bunch of, like, dog droid things that are, like, creepy, but awesome, but creepy, and there are emotions there. Hiding in this cave and being met by Teresa, the teenage daughter of the ruler of Laconia, so that she could rant about her life and her friend getting with her friend and stuff like that. Love those interactions. Amos hasn't always been a favorite character, period. Like, he hasn't. But there are times I have especially liked him. There's times I've especially been more not liking him. But this book, every scene with Amos, love it, period. Every single scene, fantastic. Especially with Amos and Teresa talking and having him be that role for her, and us knowing who he is while she's doing that. Hearing him suspiciously say, yeah, well, the captain's like that, when she's talking about something Holden said, and she's like, why'd you call him captain? And we're just like, oh god, it's Amos. It's Amos, and she doesn't realize it's Amos. But she is talking to her enemy as a friend, and she doesn't realize it. Fantastic. And then we get to the scene where she tells Timothy / Amos Barton everything she knows about her empire. Duarte's fallen, things are falling apart, they lost 2 gates. She's telling all of this to Timothy Amos Burton, and this is exactly the information we needed him to know. This is the information that he needed to know to take action or be able to tell Naomi or do anything. And we're in this high moment of like, she just revealed all the secrets and he now knows. And in that high, we're like, yes, things may go well. It's in that high that, what's the name of the dog? Teresa's dog starts barking as if she sees a friend. And she's just like, oh, it's just someone friendly. And Timothy, Amos Burton, gets his gun out and he's like, oh no. He has his, uh-oh moment, and he's like, what do you mean? And she's like, they put a tracking device on me, can you believe that? And he goes, ah, Tiny, I didn't see you coming down like this. And she's like, they're friendly, they'll be fine. And then right after she says that, Illich and the guards come in with rifles. And there's just this pause, and she goes, I can't take this back. And then the shootout starts. It is such an intense moment. It's so good. It's so good. That chapter is fantastic. And this is after other things have happened too, which we're going to talk about with Elvie. But this may be one of my favorite chapters in this book. It's just the delivery. I didn't see it coming. And my heart, I felt it. I felt it when this scene happened. As soon as I heard the dog bark, my heart dropped. Like, it dropped, and I was like, no, he just found out all the information. I've been looking for a good thing to happen, and Amos may die. But even more than just Amos dying, the situation from Teresa's perspective had no good outcome. Either Amos was going to die, Illich, who's been like raising her for years and years and years, and other friends are going to die, or both teams get hurt or something like that. Like, there wasn't a good outcome for her. And going into that scene being like, Teresa, you fucked up because of your age in a way that was really good, but also you are about to witness something you won't want to see. And she did. I like that Amos was like, lay on the ground there and cover your ears. And then he's the one who started the shooting. And she kind of watches the gunfight and watches his head get shot and then his chest. So he's dead. Like, he was dead. And she watched it. And Illich is like, immediately took her into an interrogation room and started interrogating her on who he was and what he told her, or what she told him, and all of that stuff. It's just such an intense moment. And then the chapter ends and it heads off to another plot line, and I'm like, no! Amos Burton. I think the particular feeling I was having was the fact that no one would realize, like Naomi and Alex and all of them, wouldn't realize that Amos was alive and then died. It was the fact that they were reasonable to have hope, and then we watched the reason they had hope go away. It is just, it's the fact that they don't know. I think that was what was really pulling at me this whole book, is the fact that nobody knows about the others' situations in safety until it's too late. Now, it turns out Amos didn't die, and he's alive as a kind of alien creature because the mech robot alien dog things repaired him, and he is alive, sort of. He's kind of like Miller, but not. It's weird. Every scene with him, fantastic. And again, it makes me just love Teresa's perspective that much more. Ahem. LV. LV, this whole book, or most of the book, is exploring scientific structures and the Tier 1 aliens and the Tier 2 aliens. For reference, when I say Tier 1 aliens, I'm referring to the proto-molecule. When I'm saying Tier 2 aliens, I'm referring to the ones that killed Tier 1 aliens. I don't know what they're called. My instinct is that they're called Leviathan, just given the book cover names. But I may be wrong, so I'm just going to call them the aliens that killed the Tier 1 aliens. She's doing research on all these structures they found in the open systems, all the crazy things they can find, and on the twins, or one of the creatures that was in the pen that was on her ship, and on the twins that got repaired like Amos did. So she's doing all this research. I love everything about her research and what she's doing, and her whole plot theme on like the militaristic aspect of doing science versus like the scientist's perspective on doing science, and time and being rushed on deadlines, and all those themes are all fantastic, and I love all those interactions. But I'm just gonna jump right on ahead to the idiocracy of the tit for tat that Duarte went for and decided we're gonna blow up the aliens and see what happens. And then, you know, the aliens are just like sprinkling a few atoms, a few hydrogen things, a bit of matter into the system that they're in, which for context, they're in a system with a neutron star that's just a little bit of matter away from becoming a black hole. Isn't that interesting? Aliens sprinkle in a little bit of matter. They have an oh shit moment of like, oh my god, we need to get out of here. We need to tell Medina, because Medina is like in line with this gate, and this gamma ray burst is about to go through the gate. So they get through the gate, and I'm telling everyone to move, quick. We just set off a bomb in our own system, and it may kill people. And so everyone moves, and we're like taking a breath, because Saba's on Medina. We don't want to lose Medina. We don't want Medina to get hit by a gamma ray burst. And so Medina cuts communication, and it happens, and we see it go by, and we're just like, is Medina okay? Is Medina okay? Is Saba okay? If Saba falls, then like, what's gonna happen? Medina calls in and says they're okay. Right when the Tier 2 aliens hit, right after that, Tier 2 aliens come in and are swiping at LV's ship, and it is probably the most sci-fi horror-y thing I've read. I know that book 1 had its competition with the zombies, but in terms of like a horror scene with like blood and corpses and everything like that, I think LV's perspective wins. Tier 2 aliens come through, they steal part of her thigh, steal her husband's foot, kill a lot of the people, most of the population of the ship, take away pieces of the ship, and she comes to after the fact with the ship in a new gate and sees just everything that's happened in the cockpit. And she just sends out a rescue signal of like, holy shit, we're fucked. And she knows what's about to happen. It's exactly what happened to a certain person who was part of the Free Navy. I think we can confirm that he died. Not disappeared. He didn't go Dutchman, as the people say. I think he died. Regardless, that happens, and it's such an intense scene, and it isn't until after the fact that happens that we realize that we did lose Medina, and we lost 2 gates. Not only did we lose Medina, and Saba went Dutchman and is gone, they lost 2 gates. They lost whole populations of people that just disappeared. They're just gone. And they won't know for, at minimum, 8 years if one of those solar systems exploded, i.e. all the people are dead. They won't know that for 8 years. And it's just the fact that all of this was caused by the tit for tat argument, and Duarte was like, obviously we should do this. All of this was caused by that, and what he ended up risking was his entire empire getting Dutchmaned. Does he realize that? No, because at this point, he just loses his brain. And when that reveal hits, we're just like, oh my god, there's no ruler. Obviously, the characters that need to know there's no ruler don't know there is no ruler. And again, this plays into the dramatic irony of this book. Teresa finds out, Holden finds out, and you're just like, the wrong people know. We need Naomi to know this. We need Alex to know this. Yeah. Anyway, Elvie's perspective is all hooked into the aliens and the unknown and the freakiness of everything that happens, and just her being like, what the fuck is science at this point? What is my life? I'm a biologist. What am I even looking at anymore? And just seeing that be her perspective, I love it. So I love most scenes with Elvie a lot. And Elvie having the reveal, like Holden telling Elvie's husband, like, that Cortazar was going to kill the 14-year-old Teresa, and that's also a whole thing. Like, I had an oh shit moment when Cortazar was, like, taking Teresa and was, like, going to, like, an experimentation room with her, and I was like, oh my god, oh my god, oh my god, oh my god. Even before that, I was worried about him just experimenting on her like her father wanted, let alone killing her for experimentation. And then having it show up where Elvie was in the room with her arms crossed, I took such a deep breath, because I really thought, like, this guy was going to try to kill this girl, and I have no idea if the authors would actually let her get harmed. I didn't think she was going to die, but I was worried about her getting hurt. That's a very intense moment. Another fantastic scene with Elvie. Anyway, Elvie's scenes are fantastic, and it has a lot of the elements I love a lot. And it really explores a lot of the themes on human idiocracy, and war idiocracy, and humanity. That's what a lot of this series is a social commentary on humanity, and I don't have the time to dive into all the themes, but every new book there's more and more and more themes that are proving the same point, that we are human, and humanity's probably not going to learn its lesson. Which is oof, but true. Alright, let's just talk about Cortazar's death really quick, because I'm going to forget it if I don't say it. Cortazar, he's trying to help the High Council, like, pose for, like, a fake thing, because his mind is scattered, and the High Council can't actually do the thing himself, but Cortazar came in, was like, help me set up, and then, I almost said Holden, Duarte stands up with his, like, lack of mind, and we're just like, what is he doing? What is going on? And he kind of sends Cortazar back, and Cortazar's, like, marking back, and he just approaches Cortazar, and then just says, oh. And then his head, the Cortazar's head and chest are just gone. It's slag. It is like there are just holes where they were. And we're in Elvie's perspective, and Elvie just has that, holy shit, oh shit, oh shit, holy shit, and it literally, everyone just tiptoes out of the room, because they don't know what to do. They just tiptoe out of the room, close the door, and just have a group panic attack for a minute on what they just saw and what just happened, and then be like, what do we do? I could not imagine. Just, he did something not human, obviously. He kind of just, you know, disintegrated matter. It wasn't disintegrating matter, I don't think, but kind of just, yeah, just instant death and murder, and without using a weapon. I think that would freak anyone out. And I love, after the fact, when they're out there and just like, oh shit, that just happened, what do we do? I think it's, Trejo is like, you need to escort him back to his chambers. And the guy's just like, are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? And then he does it anyway, because Laconians are crazy, and that's the whole thing of Laconia. Anyway, another fantastic scene. It's another scene that, like, the whole time I was like, oh my god, I am hooked. I am so hooked. Most of this book, I was absolutely hooked. I finished it in 2 days, in reality, because it was fantastic. So, scenes like that, I love them so much, and it really got me good. Alright. We need to mention Bobby really quick. I loved Bobby. She was a great character. She was one of my favorite characters. With the guy at the bookstore who, like, asked me who my favorite character was because I was buying the book and he read them all, I answered Bobby. I love her. She's just like all the characters. She has her flaws. She has the things that makes her, like, kind of annoying in her own right. And I think in this book, those things particularly stand out. But she was great. And how she went out was very Bobby-like. The fact Alex had to watch her die like that sucks. Like, Alex's description of seeing her get shot was painful. And my heart hurt quite a bit. And this is, like, among, you know, Amos's death and Elvie, like, watching her crew get slaughtered. Like, these are all close events to each other. So, it was an intense moment, but it felt right. And while I don't necessarily like the reliving the same scene in different perspectives thing, death, ow, aliens are coming. That was random. Well, I don't like when authors, like, have the same scene twice in a row, but with a different perspective both times, and that happened twice in this book. I can still see why they did it. They wanted to show Bobby's resolve and her opinion, and then show Alex seeing it. But regardless of that, it's still great. It's just not my favorite moment because of that. But rest in peace. I think she went out the right way, and honestly, I don't really know how, like, looking back at the book, that moment doesn't stand out as, like, as important or as intriguing as everything else that was happening, just because there was so much other stuff happening. But that was, in its own right, like, an intense scene. I also, just a quick side comment, I like Casper, and I wish the best for Casper. Period. And rest in peace, Saba. I already mentioned Saba getting noped from Medina, but I did like Saba. Aversarla died right at the beginning, and then Saba, and then Bobby. Amos pretty much died, and now he's back, but I'm still treating it like a death scene, because my heart felt it. And I think, did I already say Bobby? Aversarla, Saba, Bobby, Amos. Is it just 4? There was a lot in this book, and I think the last thing I want to say in the spoilers is that when that scene happened where Bobby died and Amos died, after that moment, the authors had me by the hook. Like, they had caught me. Because for the rest of the book, I was worried about the possibility of every crew member dying. Because it was possible. I mean, like, from my perspective, it was completely possible for, like, Alex and Naomi to die together on the ship, and then have Holden freeze to death while he's waiting at the thing, or get shot by Illich when Illich showed up with the cart. Like, I was fully prepared for the possibility of every crew member dying in the book. I wasn't fully prepared. I was mentally preparing for that possibility, and I was also mentally preparing for the possibility that Naomi and Alex show up to the landing site just to have Holden's corpse there. And that, I think that would have broken my heart more than all of the crew dying. And I was reading that whole end section like, will that happen? Like, I mean, it was suspenseful as hell for me, because I really wondered, I really truly wondered if either Holden would be killed and Naomi would see his body, or if Alex and Naomi would die, and then Teresa and Holden are stuck on their own, freezing and maybe dying too. I didn't think it would go that dark, like the Teresa dying. I wouldn't think that would happen, but they're old now, and I didn't know if they wanted to have a theme on like the other people rising up in the next book. So as soon as Amos died, they had me on the hook. They had me wondering for the rest of the book on who else would die. And it turns out Amos is fine and saves Holden's day, because Holden probably would have died, and the dog. The poor dog. Why did you shoot a dog? That's just you're just an asshole if you shoot someone's dog. John Wick. They had me. That's my point. We can just move on from there. The last thing I'll say, and this is technically a comment for the next book, but I know I'll forget it because there's going to be all kinds of things in the next book. Dogs in space are adorable, and I just want to include that comment to include some happiness in all of this. Teresa's dog in space with a little diaper and just like floating there, and people having to like still her so that she doesn't keep like moving and floating around, is absolutely adorable, and I love it so much. Like, it's just so cute. It's just so cute. I can't even. It's adorable, and I'm honestly kind of jealous. And the fact that her fur is like filling up the air recyclers is probably very accurate. That's why you need a dog with less fur. Alright, we talked about a lot of the things, but not nearly, like not even half of the things I could talk about with this book. So with all of that said, we'll just head into what's new and what's next. We'll just jump into what's next. I own it in paperback. The last book is here, and it is called Leviathan Falls. It is called the opposite of the first book. Leviathan wakes, Leviathan falls. I am hyped. I'm already 16% in this book, so you know, there's that. And I'm already freaking out at some of the developments that have happened in this book. Only 16% in, so this is gonna be epic. I'm excited. I'm also terrified, but I'm also excited. So we have reached the final book. I'm excited. And then after this book is done, I'm going to be reading a standalone. And then, a standalone's not decided yet. It might be Master of Jinn. And then, if I feel ready for it, it might be Elantris. Oh god, I'm not ready to be holding this book. I'm really not. But this is the series I said would be next. I suspect I'll love it. It's just a lot of words, so we will see. Are there images? Oh my god, there's images. Ooh. This is next, after The Expanse and after a standalone. But we're not going to talk about that yet, because I'm not mentally prepared to talk about that yet. But that is what's next. What matters is the last book of The Expanse. I have a feeling I'll be finishing it pretty soon, so I think you'll see me in like a week, at most. But I may be wrong. And then in terms of what's new, other than the fact that I bought Leviathan Falls, I also bought Persepolis Rising, so book 7. I bought the book I already finished by the time it arrived. Oops. So, that's why I library rented book 8, was because I didn't realize I was going to finish this book that fast. So, I have Persepolis Rising. I will say, okay, piece of advice for everyone reading The Expanse, which if you're watching this video, then you're probably too late to get this advice, but don't buy the paperbacks of these books. Rent them from the library, because the spines are probably one of my biggest pet peeves in the world as a reader, because the spines, they change it halfway through the series how the spines are done, and then also these are identical spines, but the rest of the spines are all different colors. Like the yellow, the other yellow they use is a different yellow. It's like a gold yellow. These two are identical, and now it's bothering me. So just don't get the spines. I'm sorry, but this is probably my biggest complaint about the series. It pains me. It pains me as a reader. Get some good covers, man. Leviathan Falls is probably my favorite cover in terms of the front, but it's still kind of nonsensical. Pretty much all of them have been like nonsensical covers, so I don't really like that either. Wah. The little things we complain about. Alright, that was all I had to say. I'm going to continue listening to my book, and I'll see you all next time. Probably a week from now. Bye-bye.